If you're like me, finding a place to eat is never an easy thing to do. Whether I'm in my hometown of Arthur or traveling, I always find myself wishing I had a trusted friend I could call to tell me where to eat. The Infatuation is that friend. The Infatuation helps you find the right restaurant for any situation. Need a place for a first date? Trying to find a spot for your birthday that you don't want to celebrate, except you also kind of do? The Infatuation has you covered in all of these situations, and many, many more. So if you ever need to find a place to eat, but don't want to read through thousands of unreliable crowdsourced reviews, hit up theinfatuation.com or download their free app for iOS and Android to search thousands of restaurant reviews and guides in 22 major cities around the world. Or let the Infatuation do the work for you by sending a text to 64560. A real person will respond and help you find a restaurant that's perfect for whatever situation you find yourself in. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Night Moves Radio. Today, we are interviewing Philip Cathalson. He has developed a character, Grace Flynn, who has had an impact on many probably young adult girls in their teens as well as women. She's a very strong woman, and she is perceived as a pirate character. He has created the Grace Flynn Chronicles and also the RPG narrative game Might and Mystic. Grace Flynn has gotten so popular, she even has her own wine, a coat, and he even has a cosplayer who comes to conventions. So I think you will enjoy this interview with Ariana and Josh as we speak to Philip Cathalson. Philip Cathalson. Thank you for tuning in.
The night has come. A pale moon shines below, and the stars are twinkling lights. It must be time for Night Moves Radio. We'll be moving to the groovy music, getting lost in the words, and be entranced by timeless art. Good evening, and thank you for tuning in. We're glad that you've come to listen.
Welcome to another episode of Night Moves Radio with Josh and Ariana. This evening we will be interviewing Phil McCall. He is an author that Josh is pretty familiar with, and we'll let Josh talk a little bit about Phil, and then we'll go straight to the interview and start speaking with Phil.
Yeah, Phil McCall is author of the Grace Flynn Chronicles, which is about a fierce female pirate. He's also the author of he goes by Philip Cathalson, his pen name, and he also has a writing his publishing company is known as Cathal.
Here, how about we've got Phil. I know Josh is trying. Maybe we'll let Phil kind of pronounce how you say some of these things. What's the name of your publishing company, Phil? You can introduce yourself and let them know more about you if you'd like.
Yeah, so I think Josh pretty much started the cover of it. I used to write under my name, Phil McCall II, or P.L. McCall II, but recently we've done some changes through my agent and through some other stuff that we found out. There was a pre-existing Philip McCall, who's actually a Scottish Glasgow actor. So because of that, I took on a pen name, which is derived from my own last name. McCall actually means son of Cathal. So I went from Philip McCall to Philip Cathalson. And it's also, my company is also named after it as well, which is Cathal. And as Josh did point out, I am the creator of the Grace Flynn Chronicles. I'm also president and CEO of Cathal Entertainment. I also have another series called Ing the Viking, which I run, and a kind of like an anthology called Penny and Dime. And I also recently just completed a successful Kickstarter on a narrative role-playing game called Might and Mystic, which will be coming out this August. And just today, this is fresh news, I'm working with a company called Antimatter Games, who produces a tabletop skirmish game here in Miami, Florida. It's a good mix of Cthulhian type legend and definitely some Jules Verne vibe and a little bit of steampunk. And they actually approached me about basically producing their fiction line.
Is that the one? Is that the one you?
And then they also wanted to license Grace Flynn for their world as well.
Oh wow, that's awesome! So you got Grace Flynn in their world, in that
Yes.
setting. I see.
Yes, there's actually a crossover event that was we're almost done with the first novel. The game with Grace in it has already been released. Antimatter has actually made miniatures for Grace and her crew members, so they're all playable. And I just got word a couple days ago that they released a new figure of Grace in a dive suit. So
nice,
it's an underwater
very
version
nice.
of Grace Flynn. So a lot of things happening. And the big news, like I said, today was Shadow Sea, which is their game. I'm producing the fiction line for them. And I actually signed Richard Lee Byers of Wizards of the Coast.
Yes, I saw that. I saw that he was. I'm friends with him too, and I saw that he's on there as well.
I don't know a lot about gaming, but that Wizard of the Coast sounds really familiar.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big brand.
Yeah,
right?
it's the brand of all brands when it comes to role playing games.
Yeah, well, they're the respective owners of Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay.
Yeah.
So.
And you got your stuff
Richard,
with them?
Richard has a long history with them, basically.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool then.
Yeah.
So we'll be releasing his first book, which is called Seekers of the Golden Citadel. And he's got 2 more books planned after that. There is a reissue and revamping version of The Devil's Army, which has been retitled to Grace Flynn. That will be releasing within the next month here. We have a softback version and a hardback version. It's all new content, new stories, updated version. Pretty excited about that.
Now, could you briefly go into how the character of Grace Flynn came to be? What is her origin? How did she pop up in your head? What kind of character is she? So on and so forth.
So, before Grace, I've been writing since I was 11. In my 40s now. And professionally, I've been writing since about 2005. And I predominantly wrote about male characters, being a man, male-centric characters. And then one day, luck would have it and fate would have it that I would become a father. And not only a father, but I would have a daughter. So as my daughter grew up, and when she was about 2, we took her on a trip to Disney World. And I noticed how my daughter was acting around the princesses, and I noticed how my wife was acting around the princesses. And it was a different experience. My daughter was totally amazed by them. My wife kind of had like fond memories of them, right? And for a moment while I'm sitting there watching this all unfold, I thought to myself, what happens when a young girl grows up and the princesses become fond memories? Where does she go from there? And I know there's Wonder Woman. There's, Captain Marvel. There's a bunch of great female comic heroes, but they all kind of have problematic starts, and they're kind of being retrofitted to a modern, feminist, powerful female movement.
They are.
They start that way.
And there's also Robert E. Howard's. David Smith and Richard Tierney kind of updated it a bit, along with Roy Thomas. Red Sonja, too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with these characters, but to me they were problematic in certain ways, such as, there was a lot of, I don't want to say unnecessary skin, but there was definitely a lot of, we've got to show as much of, the female anatomy as possible.
Yeah.
Right?
The whole sex sells thing.
And I felt that was a little counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Right? So I decided that I was going to create a character that would have all the traits of a fantastic and exciting male character, but would be a woman. And she would be just as powerful as her male counterparts, probably even more powerful. And when I created the male character, who was Baron Daedalus, or Dr. Daedalus, I wanted him to represent intellect, and I wanted Grace to represent heart, passion, and strength. And I definitely pulled on some tropes. Obviously, Grace is a pirate, and so there is that. Everybody loves pirates, right? So I wanted her to be a dangerous woman. So the idea before Grace was even formed was just one statement: whoever this is, they are the most dangerous woman alive. And that was where I started with Grace. And then I started to build on top of that. And then, I don't know if you guys have seen the pictures, most people have, Grace has a really long red scarf that is wrapped around her head and kind of flows behind her. Yeah. Well, that is a demonic entity. And that gives Grace
really?
power.
So kind of like Elric with his sword Stormbringer, in a way.
Kind of, sort of, yeah. So similar themes, right?
Yeah.
But the cool thing about this scarf is that it's from a red cap that Grace had killed.
I've heard of red caps, yeah.
Yeah. So that's where the scarf came from. The idea is that it's kind of a play on a trope that if you've ever seen Halloween costumes of pirates, there's always a red sash. So it's like a stereotype, right? Mm-hmm. So what I did was I took the idea of the red scarf, elongated the scarf, and gave it a purpose. Rather than just being like a fashion statement, that thing is the seat of Grace's power. So when Grace strikes down an enemy, she gets the strength and vitality of the person she just struck dead.
Right.
And it kind of gets her into blood rage, and eventually it's a multiplier. If you're familiar with D&D, it becomes a multiplier. So eventually Grace can be, could have the strength of 10 men.
So it's essentially pirate berserker.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you were to put it in terms, yes.
Yeah.
And the other thing about her that a lot of the readers like is that, Grace has a lot of heart, she has a lot of passion, and there are things that Grace stands for, such as, she doesn't condone or allow the abuse of women. Mm-hmm. And if she sees these acts, it kind of sets her into a blood rage almost. Basically, she's going to, make sure that which she sees is not going to happen again. And, Grace is very down to earth. Grace is the heart of the novel. She is the living embodiment of passion, love, and anger and hate all at the same time. And, people often say, how can a man write a woman? And I said, well, I didn't really write a woman. I wrote Grace. She's a person.
Right.
It was only necessary to have her be a woman when it was important to the context of the story. Yeah. And really, at the context of the story, it was only important because it was the 1800s, and women were subjugated to all kinds of different rules, not only in society, but, through power struggles, through, sexism and other things. So it was important that those topics were brushed upon because she lived in that time period. So we were going to have her break the mold. And at the end of the day, the goal was to give not only my daughter, but other women and young women the opportunity to have a hero that they could look up to. And what's interesting about Grace is she starts off as a villain and then becomes a hero. So it's a reverse run.
That's pretty cool too. Kind of like Jack Sparrow in a way, but I bet she's not as nutty as he is.
No, Grace is very